Welcome back to Inside Games, the only gaming news show brave enough to report some news. Actually report it.
We did it. We're grown-up journalists today. Raven Software is, at the time of recording on December 8th, currently in their third day of an unpaid work walkout after a labor dispute caused by the unexpected termination of 12 members of their quality assurance department. We spoke with several of those members and bring you their stories today.
I want to just say it up at the front here. Lawrence did all this work here. Lawrence did big journalistic work, wrote the script, talked to all these people, so great job, Lawrence.
Well, thank you, Bruce.
Because of that, the tone of this episode will be a little slightly different than you're used to, I think. Often our episodes contain a mix of information and commentary. Since we can report the story directly this time, we won't lean into commentary so much and instead let the people who experienced the event speak for themselves.
Also, just comedically, I mean, it's a struggle to land a joke when multiple people just got told they lost their jobs. You know, it's one thing to dunk on video games, you know, Master Chief snag of a pilot. Come on, shut up, guy.
Worthless junk.
This is on a different level.
That dude really does need to take a chill pill, though.
Yeah, man, you're with RoboCop. Just enjoy the ride. That's my news break bulletin update thing. Got an update for you guys because this situation is moving very quickly. It's currently midday, Thursday, December 9th, and I got three major things to share with you. First of all, the Raven team received an email from management this morning saying that they would be paid for their walkout days Monday through Wednesday, but not going forward. So a lot in this story, we refer to a lot that they were not paid for their 3 days of walkout to the time of writing. That has changed. They have 3 days of compensation, but they are unpaid going forward for walkout days. So keep that in mind going forward. Second, as of Thursday, the team is now officially on strike. And third, the team has also launched a crowdfunding campaign to cover their expenses during the strike. If you want more information about that, we have a link in our sources list in the description. That just about covers it. This is moving, but please try to keep that in mind as the story goes forward. All right, thank you very much. So if you followed gaming industry headlines in the past, this story may sound like many others. Seasonal terminations are pretty common in QA departments, especially among temp employees. It's really hardly a new event, unfortunately.
Yeah, there are tons of factors that make this specific event extremely bizarre, though. Not least of which is the fact that Activision Blizzard is actually converting approximately 500 part-time workers to full-time in the next few months, according to a statement the company sent to the Cap Times.
500 people and laying off 20 people just doesn't make sense to us. And to be let go arbitrarily in good terms, it's outrageous.
This seemingly random decision to terminate, or technically not renew, a small group of individuals without any expressed reason has completely disrupted many people's lives, including those that recently relocated to Wisconsin without financial assistance from Raven as part of the company's return to in-office work.
Yeah, Raven QA tester Clayton Rudd writes, quote, "I'm devastated. Not for myself, but for the other essential testers that have been let go, seemingly at random. I feel betrayed because all the work I've done has been undercut. I know that the people who made the final decision do not know me or the work I've done."
It's not just Raven QA walking out on the job either. Treyarch's QA department, Blizzard QA, and Activision side departments in QA in Texas and Minnesota have all joined the walkout on Tuesday, December 7th.
Activision Blizzard's only public response specific to the walkout so far is a brief statement to the Washington Post saying, quote, "We support their right to express their opinions and concerns in a safe and respectful manner without fear of retaliation."
And so far, Activision Blizzard appears to be backing that up. According to Raven QA tester Evan Villanoza, workers in these departments are being paid for their walk-off days, while, and this is really weird, the Raven team specifically is not getting paid for their walkout days, despite all the temp employees on that team still being under a work contract until January 28th.
We're not exactly reaching out and begging or asking even for pay. It's still so bizarre to me that these other teams who have not been directly affected by these layoffs are the ones getting paid during these demonstrations and stuff. It's so weird.
And we've barely scratched the surface of just how truly bizarre this whole situation is. People are upset. They're walking off the job. And we're going to try our best to break down everything that's going on here.
So news time. To do that, here's a timeline of events. According to a public message sent by the Raven QA team, members were called into individual meetings on Friday, December 3rd. Now, if you've ever been a contractor at a company before or a part-time employee, you know what happens when you get a mysterious one-on-one invite at the end of the week.
Some employees were given good news in the form of a full-time job offer and a raise to $18.50 an hour. Others, 12 out of about 40 employees, were told their contracts would be terminated on January 28th.
Clayton Rudd expressed his confusion at the abrupt dismissal. Quote, I was deeply rooted in other departments and was very surprised to be let go. When I received my meeting, I was expecting a pay raise and a title change.
Those dismissed, quote, were left in outrage when we learned that we were being let go for arbitrary reasons, end quote, according to Clayton.
Didn't take long for that outrage to hit social media. That afternoon, Raven Associate Community Manager Austin O'Brien didn't mince words on Twitter, saying, quote, if it isn't clear, this is bullshit. It's unfair to these people to string them along, promising something better and then let them go. I am infuriated right now.
That evening, the Washington Post reported on the layoffs, noting that, quote, quality assurance testers across the games industry have spoken up in the past about dismal work conditions and unwillingness from companies to promote them to full-time roles, volatility of the job, as well as the stigma that their jobs are simply playing video games.
So we can naturally assume this resulted in no action or communication from Activision Blizzard management, as the Raven QA walkout began the following Monday, December 6th, which was also covered by the Washington Post on the same day.
So, what makes this situation so much different than your typical run-of-the-mill casual mass firing of QA workers? That happens a lot in this industry.
Just another holiday season, let's boot them all out to the curb.
Yeah, it happens all the time.
So, timing, to be fair, like we mentioned before, the contracts did extend to mid-January, so there was at least that. They did actually have them covered for this holiday, but not long after. But neglecting that, Evan would like to remind you that it's ridiculous that it's become so commonly accepted in the first place.
We want to change the standards of the industry, but people have been responding to us saying, that's the gaming industry, signed up for it. You should know what to expect, but doesn't have to be like that.
But even beyond the simple premise that jobs could and should be more secure for people that work diligently, there are so many circumstantial factors to this story that combine to create a human element that might explain why this is a breaking point for too many people.
Yeah, Raven QA tester Alexander Rose summed up his feelings saying, quote, I'm devastated. I have friends at this studio. I spent years trying to live in the same place and work at the same studio as my best friend. And we finally were able to make it happen after almost a decade of trying. That's been taken from us.
So as we said previously, there are tons of factors that make this event stick out. Layoffs at game studios typically follow poor performance or missed sales targets. Raven Software themselves laid off around 40 employees back in 2010 after their time-shifting FPS Singularity badly missed sales targets, and that's normal. That's what a business is.
Yeah, that's just kind of how it goes, especially in game development. You have so much baked-in cost riding on one event, the launch and sales of a game. And if it doesn't hit, you got to cut costs immediately because you're in the hole. But that's not really the case here. In this case, Raven Software's primary and ongoing project is Call of Duty Warzone, a game that by all rights is extremely successful. In April 2021, Activision announced that Warzone earned over 100 million players. And the Raven QA team pointed us to a study from NetBet, claiming that the service earns $5.2 million a day.
And I believe that study now that the Raven QA team has pointed us to it, by the way, because I feel like they probably know a little more than we do. Call of Duty Warzone is also, of course, you know it, a service-based game. Traditionally, QA work on video games has been more seasonal than constant, owing to the heavy QA demand at the end of a game's development cycle. But content for Warzone is always in a state of development, testing, and deployment, thanks to its service-based nature.
And to that point, Raven's team did just deploy a large content update in the Vanguard/Warzone Pacific map update, so I guess in that way, it's sort of similar to more traditional QA firings after a large shipment, but still, there will be more updates, and those will need to be tested.
Yeah, remember that not only did the majority of Raven's QA team convert to full-time employees, but other Activision Blizzard studios were able to convert their entire QA teams to full-time, including Treyarch and High Moon.
Okay, so in that context, which is clearly outside of how QA firings normally go, why were the 12 members of what was considered to be a very important and functional group dismissed?
Alexander Rose writes, quote, I find myself wondering what I did wrong and feeling like there's something wrong with me. I did my job, I worked hard, and then they let me go. Only to discover that more full-time positions were created for my role elsewhere throughout ABK, which was hard to process emotionally because I was excited to see others at QA finally receive better treatment, but devastated that for some reason, regardless of my work, I wasn't deserving of something that we had been expecting for the better part of a year. Man, I know exactly how this guy feels. Exactly.
Yeah. God, it's sting. It's so frustrating that this shit just happens over and over. So about that last part, about the being led to believe in something, that actually referenced something specific. All of the soon-to-be terminated Raven QA testers were told repeatedly over the course of 2021 that good news was on the way. That good news was even used as a justification for not reviewing or updating pay during the usual annual review cycles in March 2021.
And that, to me, by the way, is the linchpin for this entire story. That they're telling them something good was coming and absolutely flipped the script on them. So, quote, leadership let us know that Activision was executing a temporary employment agreement overhaul, which they said halted them from making any changes on a studio level until after these plans were executed. End quote. That's what Evan said.
But being surprise fired after a year of delayed raises and promises of good news would be bad enough. But it gets worse. Several members of the team had just relocated to the Wisconsin area to work out of the office directly.
Quote, I uprooted my life from New York where I was born and raised, Alexander said. And that is where my entire family resides, and I also left newborn nieces and nephews.
Yeah, now Alexander's not only separated from his family, but is also worried about his personal health as well due to, quote, pre-existing conditions which require medications for my mental health that I need after a hospitalization in 2019 for OCD and major depression. Access to these medications is now in jeopardy for me.
QA tester Clayton Rudd's timing is also tragic. Quote, I just moved to Madison last week. They told us that it would be required for us to relocate, which I did without financial support from the studio. I moved from Minnesota, and I'm now 4.5 hours away from my friends and family with a 1.5-year lease without a job come January 28th.
When you add it all together, the situation is really, really hard to understand, specifically from Raven QA's perspective. The entire team was told good news was coming. That was used to delay normal pay adjustment cycles, and the good news ended up being a surprise termination for 12 random team members while hiring 500 others across the company. And all of this happened after mandating the team move to Wisconsin without any financial assistance to work out of the office there.
So what gives here? If there were performance issues with the employees dismissed, it seems unlikely the entire team would be walking out without pay to demand their hiring. Not to mention the teams that have walked out across Activision Blizzard in solidarity with Raven QA.
In our discussions with Raven QA, there is one possibility that emerged, and it's relating to the division of labor between developer-level QA and publisher-level QA.
To briefly explain the arrangement, Raven Software has their own QA department that works directly with other teams at the studio, even though they are technically employed by Activision Blizzard.
So as a publisher, Activision Blizzard has their own QA departments too. They have departments located in Minnesota, Texas, and other locations. Raven QA tester Evan Villanosa says in recent months that the Raven team in Wisconsin were actually teaching and managing Activision teams in Minnesota regarding Warzone work.
It wasn't clear to us, but we had feelings that our work was going to be outsourced to these other larger, cheaper sources of labor, namely Texas, Minnesota, and I would assume Shanghai, but we don't really have contact with them.
It's a reasonable concern, but in context, it doesn't really hold up logically. If Activision were trying to cut payroll costs, they definitely wouldn't have converted even part of Raven's QA staff to full-time, not to mention all of Treyarch and High Moon's QA departments.
Yeah, additionally, and this is where it really falls apart, the proposed salary increases in Wisconsin would bring all temp employees up to $17 an hour, and specifically to converting employees in Raven's QA department up to $18.50 an hour. That rate is actually less than the average hourly rates in both Minnesota and Texas for video game QA testers, which are $21 and $28 an hour according to ZipRecruiter.
So if Activision Blizzard wanted the cheapest QA, ostensibly they've already got it. And yet they're raising rates and hiring across the board.
And somehow 12 random people get tossed out in the middle of all that. So yeah, it's weird, it's baffling, and now hopefully it's a little more understandable why in this specific circumstance, these 12 people are just wondering what the heck's going on.
Activision's statement on the matter doesn't address the confusion much. In a statement to the Cap Times, a spokesperson revealed that they are, quote, converting approximately 500 temporary workers to full-time employees in the coming months, end quote, but that somehow, quote, as part of this change, we also have notified 20 temporary workers across studios, including some workers at Raven, but also other studios, that their contracts would not be extended.
Okay, so 12 out of 20 are specifically Raven QA though. Out of all the temp workers to be cut, why do more than half of them come just from Raven's QA department?
So the only remaining theory is that it's simply corporate number juggling. Tax codes in varying states may have created a situation in which Activision Blizzard needed to trim X number of temp workers, and the decision was made semi-arbitrarily by some executive that will never answer to anyone for the consequences of it.
The only thing that makes sense, right? Who knows? Not that Activision Blizzard themselves have been consequence-free lately. Companies have been sued by both the United States federal government and the state of California in the last few months over their alleged systemic harassment of women.
Yeah, this resulted in employee walkouts on 2 separate occasions, once in July and another in November, as additional accusations and information came to public knowledge.
Yeah, it's worth noting, though, that these two issues seem unrelated so far, apart from indicating a breakdown of communication in executive layers at the company. Activision Blizzard's discriminatory activity is illegal. This, even according to, Raven QA's accounting, it's arbitrarily cruel and inhumane, even if it is technically legal.
Yeah, either way, the context is not going to make it easy to give Activision Blizzard the benefit of the doubt in this case. If anyone even wanted to do that in the first place, which I don't know that it really got many fans right now.
I mean, I try, like, as a responsible journalist, you're supposed to try, which, by the way, we did reach out for comment and, didn't get one, but the decline in goodwill towards Activision Blizzard also creates particularly fertile ground to leverage for better wages and employment condition awareness, which does seem to be at the core of this issue, particularly for QA testers in the industry.
Quote, they literally lost more amounts of money in the labor in the last 3 days than they would have spent taking on 12 more full-time positions, Clayton Rudd said. It's mind-boggling to me the thought processes behind these decisions. These testers are essential and QA is vital.
Yeah, that point may be apparent sooner rather than later. Scattered reports on Twitter indicate there may be performance and crashing problems with Warzone's specific map updates, specifically on PlayStation 4 and 5.
We actually asked if there were issues that Raven QA would be working on right now in normal circumstances, to which Evan replied, quote, theoretically, yes.
In this case, it will remain a theory, unless Activision Blizzard can find room for 12 more full-time hires.
Quote, gamers always say, wow, did anyone QA this? But they may just see what a game without QA looks like, Clayton Rudd warns.
And even if the walkouts end without the team's demand being met, again, that one demand is that these 12 members get a full-time job offer. Evan still feels like this demonstration is important to reinforce the value of quality assurance in an industry that often treats them as unskilled and disposable.
I don't know if we're going to be successful in any communication with upper leadership until they see a significant impact on the work that we do. So therefore, we're trying to have all of our QA departments across ABK come together and walk out with us and hope to show that QA is not unskilled labor. QA can't be replaced, and just hope that they see how valuable we are and that we should deserve these full-time positions.
Yeah, we want to say thanks again to Raven's QA team for speaking with us, specifically Lawrence. Lawrence has been speaking with them for the last couple of days, so great job to them and great job to you, Lawrence.
And this is what it's all about. This is what we're here for. So yeah, I really enjoyed doing this kind of coverage. Try to remain neutral, but I mean, Bruce, it's tough to remain neutral because we've both been in this circumstance many times, and it sucks to get treated that way. So
this all comes down to money. It always does. This is I think you've hit the nail on the head with the tax codes and with the full-time heads. Just something that people may not know about large companies. Generally, they are trying to keep down headcount. And what I mean by headcount is full-time employees. So whenever they keep that count down, that means that their budget is X number of dollars and their revenue is higher than their budget, and that's what their profit is. So then the more full-time heads they take on, the less their profit is. So that's probably what's going on here. And a bunch of people were just caught in the crossfire. I did a little clown math, by the way, when I was sitting down reading this script, and it is probably in the neighborhood, and I went super high on like how much benefits are worth and how much they should be getting paid an hour, and it's probably like 1.5 million to keep on about 20 employees for the year, which is nothing. The game makes 5 million a day.
Yeah, so less than a game's daily revenue.
To give these employees a year's worth of employment is a quarter of a day's revenue. That's nothing.
There was just some balance sheet that had to get equaled out somewhere, buried in a P&L form. 2 numbers had to match, and 12 temp getting cut is just what it meant. And they were just, fuck it all, we'll figure it out on the tail end. Oh, it's ridiculous. That's all I can figure. It's the only thing that doesn't make sense, but it's the only thing that explains anything.